have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it! My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
And now, Reality Rants with Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
We are live, kicking off week 3 already of the broadcast. And I was talking behind the scenes with the producers and kind of thinking about how far technology has come. Now, for those that don't know my background, other than the documentary film work, the way that I really got into quote unquote what they call podcasting now or streaming or any of that was really through InfoWars and Alex Jones back in the day when he was producing my films. And he was pioneering live streaming radio. Let me repeat that. He was pioneering it. There were only a few people that were really doing it, and they weren't doing it like Alex. What do I mean by that? So you could say that Howard Stern was the biggest thing in talk radio. Love him or hate him, and I have mixed feelings because I grew up on Howard Stern. I have many joyful moments of listening to that morning radio and watching the E! Show, and that's how you watched radio for the very first time. There were a few people that tried to imitate that. Don Imus and MSNBC, they would have it. I believe Bob and Tom got broadcasted, but that really, that was some boring stuff. They weren't going to articles. There wasn't an interaction. Alex Jones was doing it live and in full. Doing it live, doing it full, and doing it sometimes 6 days a week. 5-day morning show, and then he'd have the Sunday show as well, which was only 2 hours. Extraordinary. That's I don't think people understand how difficult it really is to no matter what kind of information you're talking about, whether you're a serious news broadcaster or you're a sports broadcaster or you're pure fluff and entertainment like Stern, right? That kind of broadcaster. To hold an audience, especially via radio as your massive outlet. And that's what Alex's massive outlet really was. Micro, AM, some FM stations. But he pioneered this. Okay? And I came in around 2008. And this is when he was just starting to expand. He was about to leave his smaller offices, which if you watch the old shows, it's like basically black and some studio foam in the backdrop with myself and Alex, and you would be cramped in this little radio booth if you had 2 people. I mean, like, you'd be really cramped. What wasn't really, very comfortable to be in there. It wasn't like an in-studio thing. And then all of a sudden, everything just exploded, right? And there's a device out there that you really want to use if you're in the quote-unquote news business. Guys like Gary Franchi, who began with the Lone Lantern Group, and then he founded that, and then moved into Next News Network. I remember early on when he was doing that, he got himself a TriCaster. And these things were, thousands of dollars in most cases. Very technical. When I got my show on InfoWars and it expanded, when we got these new offices, you see where it went from like 2008 to 2009. You got 2 producers behind the scenes, and they're clicking buttons, and they're doing all these things. And after I left InfoWars, there were a couple things that were kind of discouraging at the time, to just be able to go on your own and do videos like this one. Okay? So what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, in order to do something like this, there was no live streaming on YouTube like when I left in 2010. Okay? That's not a thing. They weren't allowing that. That's one. There was some bandwidth that would allow it, but most computers also, with graphics processing, you were talking about in the door with cards and processors in the thousands of dollars again. All right? And I would say that started to change about 5-6 years ago. Everything got cheaper, and the software got incredible. So I never get paid by XSplit, but whenever anybody asks me, I go, I like this better than OBS. And I realize OBS is free, but the price of XSplit is so cheap. And they give you a free version, 720p with 4 scenes, so you can get accustomed to it if you want. And it's really up to my imagination now, right? I build all these sets. These are just PNG files for the dorks out there. And I'm able now, with your help, with the Bermas Brigade, and I want to thank you guys so much, and the help of RVM with this morning show. Again, this is only week 3. On the low end, guys, on the very low end, between all the platforms, okay, we're reaching 5,000 to 10,000 people a day on the show. That's very low end, but about 5,000 to 10,000. That's not all the clips and stuff. That's the live show, okay? And it obviously repeats, but the first hour anyway, without the second hour of the broadcast. Now, we love to give everything away for free, but we have to have the premium end of it, but you can still get the audio over on Podbean. So right now, here's another example. We are broadcasting across Podbean. I believe they have it going on Getter now. They're on Rumble. I'm on Rumble. Rockfin, YouTube, Twitter. I mean, that's that would be virtually impossible. 10 years ago. All those platforms, number one, wouldn't exist, right? So now you're able to do this in an array, and obviously I have the producers on the other side doing a couple of those, but I'm literally doing 4 of them right here. And anybody can do that. I could honestly be doing more if I upgraded my equipment and spent a couple grand, which is incredible. Technology moves. And when I say 5,000 to 10,000 on the low end, on the high end, we're going 20,000, 30,000 plus. The episode where we talked about Kerry Lake the day after the elections, I mean, that did very well. So I need your guys' help to grow, and so we can continue to talk about what's really going on, all right? And what's really going on is that a bunch of globalist puppets are playing dress up halfway across the world to decide how we're supposed to live the rest of our lives under the guise that human beings are bad and we're the ones destroying the planet. Not the people at the top that are represented here that have basically been the source, more or less, for the majority of the real pollution in our water, in our air, in our soil, in our food. Those people, they're not bad. They get to keep doing that. Okay? Think about just all the military testing alone. I was talking about the ag world there and the corporate world. Yeah. So they got to play dress up. And not only did they play dress up, but I want to read this first because I was talking to Dan Dix on Sunday. I think we're going to be airing that one tomorrow. Pretty sure we're going to air Dan Dix tomorrow. Then we have Pastor Craig Hagan on Wednesday. And then Thursday, I think we're going to have Ian Crossland. Finally. I've got to set up the Crossland interview and basically do that one as a pre-record. And we're having Patrick Byrne today. We can't really have Patrick Byrne on the uncensored part of the broadcast, but you may want to listen for free or spend that $1 for the first week. Come over to redvoicemedia.com/Jason and you'll get that. But I was talking to Dan Dix, okay? And I'm saying, look, they're right. They're saying it. This is the new religion. They're bringing back the Gaia religion, and it's a religion of slavery for us. And you can't make this up. And I want to thank Clay Clark, by the way, for bringing this to my attention. Egypt's Mount Sinai, just a hop, skip, and a jump from Israel, is the site's most commonly known as the place where God appeared to Moses to give him the 10 Commandments, the primary covenant in Judaism, as well as the foundation for most other religions and many modern-day laws. Now, this mountain will be a venue for many nations to gather to receive their newest creed, emanating from the world's highest and most exalted religion of climate change. Excuse me. So, climate change as a religion, man. They're not playing. It's not a joke. This ain't The Onion. Yes, climate change has become the latest addition to world religions, leaving others in the dust as it endeavors a bond and solidify all people under the banner of caring for the planet, which translates into caring for one another. Who would be against such a lofty goal? All are invited to participate in an auspicious conference, COP27, to take place November 6th to 18th, 2022. So still going on, by the way. And then, again, we're going to show you. First of all, I've got a watch-along planned, given the time, we'll see, with Joe Biden, where he speaks for about 15, 16 minutes. Awful camera work, whoever did it over at C-SPAN. Awful. But out of the gates, who's he praising? Someone we talk about a lot more than I hear a lot of people talking about, John Kerry. Because John Kerry is the one making the connections right here. And he is not under nearly enough scrutiny. He's been a ball player for a long time, John Kerry. All right. And John Kerry, again, runs way more of what I would say is not only obviously this foreign climate policy, but domestic policy that's about to try to cut the energy off from you and I and bring in sustainability. All right? So everybody's invited to participate. I'll bet everybody's invited to participate. In Egypt's Sinai Peninsula at the Sharm el-Sheikh. The name COP27 refers to the 27th annual meeting of the United Nations Conference of Parties. Oh, it's a party, all right. The Conference of Parties. What we got here? Okay. All right. Let's see. But this year is a greater focus on extending an invitation to religious communities and religious leaders who are believed to have a key role to play in addressing climate change and criminal justice, which require deep transformation within society. It looks like interfaithsustain.com. Oh, the call for ceremonial repentance for failing the planet is consequentially going to be front and center. See, we're bad. Think about that. They want you to bend the knee to the planet. They're going to bend the knee. None of these people are going to change the way they live. The way they live is going to stay just the same. And their little minions think it's going to get even better, and they're going to get power. Oh, power. Now, I'm going to shoot off on an angle for a second here that a lot of people are going to be like, what are you talking about? Andrew Tate. I don't talk a lot about Andrew Tate. I don't know a whole lot about Andrew Tate. I've seen some interviews with Tate on InfoWars, and then I also watched the one with Piers Morgan because I like to see the establishment side. And Piers Morgan is, about as good at promoting the establishment agenda as any other mainstream hack out there. And to Piers Morgan's credit, he handles the talking points better than most. Okay, and I didn't think that, for instance, Tate came across great in that interview. But sitting there, and I was watching this Tate in the back of a car talking about FTX, talking to this guy who was running it, okay? And I don't even want to get into all that right now, but we'll get there. And he says, look, when you see a guy like that, and he's got money, and he's telling you, oh, he lives in this little apartment, and oh, he drives a Corolla, right? In other words, he's not blinging out. He's not buying penthouses like Tate or cars or whatever. He's like, there's a certain point where money's just a number. It really doesn't matter anymore. All right. And after that, all you're thinking about with your money is what kind of power you can buy with it. If you're thinking beyond all the things, material things that I'm talking about. And he goes, I never trust a guy that's sitting there and says, look at me. I'm just in a regular t-shirt and I'm going to hoard all this money. And he goes, because that person he goes, in my experience in my life, and I've been around, that person's always just kind of looking to buy power and elevate themselves. In other words, a social climber in this system. And that really hit home with me because I could compare that to somebody like a Warren Buffett, right? Oh, Warren Buffett, he lives in a modest house. He likes ice cream. He doesn't live a lavish lifestyle, all those things. He's like, I don't trust that guy. I don't trust Warren Buffett. And even Gates, although Gates has all these places and stuff, how does he portray himself? Oh, I'm in a pink sweater. He played the Buffett plan. How do they try to make you look at Joe Biden? Grandpa Joe with an ice cream cone. It's a scam. It's a Bernaysian tactic. And, I don't know the intricacies of this whole FTX thing, but that hit home with me. It's like, you know what? I don't like the brash guy. In fact, I was never a real big Trump fan before he ran for politics at all. At all. But I never watched The Apprentice. Come on, I had jobs. I had a life. Like, what are you talking? You thought The Apprentice? You're fired? Are you kidding me? Donald Trump, for me, okay, he's somebody who's kind of in the peripheral when I'm a kid. And when I say I'm a kid, I'm talking 80s kid, guys, because I'm an old man. I'm 43 years young. And he's basically, for me, and how it was portrayed, is he was this success. He was a playboy, right? He always had different women. I remember when he first left Ivanka for Marla Maples, that was a big scandal in the tabloids. I remember specifically him being involved in pro wrestling, which was a big deal. Was a big WWF fan. Oh, that's right. Not yet, guys. I'm that old. So you kind of saw the showman of it. They were sticking him in movies as I grew up. He was in the Home Alone films, I think the second one. So he was very much there in pop culture. But I also remember when they were trying to tear him down and the bankruptcy, right? And I saw that end of it. So I always wondered, well, how good of a businessman is he? What is this guy? But he was never really getting too involved in politics at that point. It wasn't until later on, as I grew up into my late teens, early 20s, that he was even weighing in on anything and kind of fishing out there that one day maybe he'd be president. Now, throughout that whole time period, then Donald Trump, for me, I understand he has that TV show and blah, blah, blah. But in the peripheral is more in pop culture in the way of music, right? Which is astounding, right? There were so many of these acts that would basically use the term Trump as a success story, okay? And I just, I think by then he was on, I'm not sure if he was on Wife 3 or whatever, but again, I've never loved the guy that's got all that excess and is that brash. So he wasn't my favorite. In the debates, however, if you watched my broadcast, at least the uncensored version, with Chappelle, I totally agree with Chappelle because he brought an aura of truth to, he called Trump an honest liar, right? Which I don't care what you say, guys. To get to that and stay in those positions, in my mind, you can't be 100% honest, especially with everybody. If you've ever been around, like for instance, the entertainment industry, there was a time period where it was very real that myself and the other two guys that did Loose Change were going to get that film into theaters. We were meeting with real people, right? I can't tell you how sick I felt the entire time I was out there. And I don't mean like, physically ill. Although I tell you what, I wasn't in love with the food there. There are a lot of things not in love with in LA and West Hollywood and that whole region. But people are so fake, man. And you just get a bad vibe about, and that's not just like the everyday thing. Like the everyday thing, you're in that area, it's kind of just like anywhere else. But when you're actually talking to these people that, again, are trying to climb socially, and I've never even been at the apex global levels where they're running around in little outfits now. Okay, I'm going to show you these outfits. It's out of control. It is out of control. What is going on in this world? What is going on? So I'm going to just show it. All right, we're gonna get to this. I don't want the audio on it, but whatever. We'll do it, and we'll do it big. Okay. Now the thing is that I got out of this is Biden looks so damn feeble. All right, let me. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Boom. I mean, Biden. I know this is very blurry. I got to go find like the C-SPAN footage of it, but he looks so feeble. Like you'll see the Secret Service agent kind of point in the direction. He's with Trudeau, and they're all in like these like crazy Cambodian type t-shirts, and there's another picture of Klaus in one of the shirts with another one of these dictators that's just like, they don't care about you. And they're just on board with this whole plan of command and control. But look at these outfits. Here we go. And they're like, look, the guy's pointing to him. He's like, I don't know where to go. Joe can barely walk on this one. Hey, oh, thank you. God love you. Oh, we're going this way? All right. Okay. And he's next to Trudeau. Oh, the wannabe Chinese dictator. Look at these outfits. We live in a cartoon. We live in a cartoon. Talk about like these are the humiliation rituals of today. And more than likely, we're going to end up getting to Joe and his address from a few days ago over at the Copenhagen COP27 conference. You look at that logo, and it almost looks like a backwards Comedy Central logo. Once again, because it's cartoonish to think that frail, old, dementia-ridden man who was once a mighty gangster, for globalism and corruption and the predator class and the military-industrial complex and the war machine. Once proud gangster, to think that guy runs anything at this point when he can't even think about how incompetent that is. He can't walk down around a corner with other world leaders. Like, he can't just keep up with Trudeau. He's got to go to his Secret Service guys. By the way, guys, we don't even have 100 thumbs up over on YouTube. Let's get the thumbs up. In a little over a half an hour, we're going to go exclusively over to Red Voice Media, the uncensored portion of the broadcast. But here's another cool thing. It's 2 weeks later. So free there is the second hour now in video form at Red Voice. And I'll probably put out a couple clips via some of the other platforms that you'll also be able to check out. And now you'll know those are free. So after 2 weeks, we're also going to put some of those out free. But like on YouTube, there's just certain things we're not able to talk about. And that's why Patrick Byrne's going to be with us for just about a half an hour at the top of the hour, hopefully sharp. And we're going to be talking about this election, the results, where we go from here, what are real solutions and reform. Because I told everybody There's no infrastructure change. Why'd you think you were getting your red wave? This corruption has been going on a long, long time. Well before 2016, guys, okay? So, this next story I want to be careful with, okay? It's a tragic story. It kind of turns my stomach. It kind of makes me feel like that Hollywood feeling. Santino Bianco, the 4-year-old boy, has been the face of the Argentina National You-Know-What campaign, has died suddenly. Okay? 4-year-old boy. Because that's normal. And because we're on certain platforms right now, I just got to sit here, act like sad story. Nothing we can do about it. Certainly can't talk about what may have caused it. Can't do that. And just, I think it was yesterday. Just yesterday, I was going through my Facebook feed, and I've got a really good buddy. He's actually in the YouTube world. Him and his longtime girlfriend, they're in the comedy arena. Very funny guy. Knew him back when he was an engineer and a DJ. That's how we met. And all of a sudden I'm scrolling through and I see basically a link to an obituary and a black and white photograph and a buddy of his. And it's this long diatribe of somebody he's known since he was like 17 years old, maybe, as a teenager in high school. And he's just died suddenly. And you just got to wonder how many people are going to die suddenly in the next 2 to 3 years. Because I've always said, watch out 3 to 5 years later. That's all. That's all I've said. I don't want to go any further than that. I just hope that there aren't a lot of people in the near future dying suddenly. So, I wanted to bring this up because we talk about 9/11 here. I think that this is really interesting. I hadn't seen this before. Suspiciously timed comments shortly before the first crash at the World Trade Center on 9/11, Navy Commander Kirk Lippold was at CIA headquarters, okay, complaining that the American public needed a seminal event to awaken them to the threat of terrorism. Now, you read this, it's really interesting. Number one, you had a drill that day of a small plane flying in, I believe, to the Central Intelligence Agency headquarters at Langley. There were several drills of planes attacking in suicide missions, not only that day, but in the months leading to 9/11, and people don't want to talk about that. Amalgam Virgo among them. Look up Northern Vigilance, Vigilant Guardian. There's still a bunch of classifications on that as well. Okay? But let's read this. 3 senior CIA officers, Charlie Allen, Don Kerr, and John Russick, were having a long-planned breakfast at the agency with Navy Commander Kirk Lippold, who had been commanding officer of the USS Cole when the ship was attacked in Yemen. Much of the discussion naturally focused on terrorism. So people should also look to the Cole attack that was blamed on bin Laden. The agency participants later told me that Lippold was distressed that the American people still didn't recognize the threat. It will take some seminal event, he said, to awaken the public. After the breakfast, Lippold went to CDC for some briefings. When the World Trade Center was struck minutes later, Charlie Allen reached the commander and told him the seminal event just happened. Coinky dink, I'm sure. Just a little coinky dink. Exclusive. Miss Populator Ghislaine Maxwell's life behind bars is hardly bleak, as the sought-after ex-socialite strolls with a prison pal, is chosen to lead battle of the units checkers competition, and guides inmates to the best romance books in the library. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this, because we're going to show you pictures, the whole nine. There were a lot of memes out there, false memes. Now, here's what everybody should have been focusing on. Why didn't Jeffrey Epstein survive in prison? Why wasn't he treated like the most high-profile inmate of all time and been under watchful guard so nothing could have possibly happened to him? Period. Well, I think it's pretty obvious why that didn't happen. Now, everything should be on the table. I'm not saying that. But you notice some of the obvious disinformation in the immediate aftermath of Epstein and his suicide was that the body that we were looking at wasn't Jeffrey Epstein's, but it was Anthony Bourdain's. Now, the immeasurable idiocy and ludicrous nature of that is almost beyond words. Almost beyond words. But it was pumped and memed everywhere. People were circling ears. Now, I just want everybody to think about that for a second. Anthony Bourdain, who apparently committed suicide. Some people have questioned that as well, and I think that's okay to question. He was certainly saying some things that were pretty provocative at the time of his death. But the idea that Bourdain would be dead for quite some time, I think it might have been well over a year, maybe years before what happened to Epstein, okay? Didn't have a funeral or a burial and was somehow kept on ice to act as a double for Jeffrey Epstein, whom he didn't really look like that much. I mean, there's some kind of a resemblance in an extraction plan is utterly insane. Utterly insane. But in order to try to say, oh, you know, make that meme up, they'll put something ludicrous with it, right? And I think the evidence is clear. I think Jeffrey Epstein is a dead man. I think that it's obvious that he wasn't extracted, in that the first time he tried to commit suicide, it didn't happen there. And there's a plethora of evidence that, in fact, he was attacked. His lawyer said that he was attacked by Nicholas Tartaglione, the cellmate. Just saying, I'm not saying that. Those were mainstream reports. Okay? So then we get to the next meme with Ghislaine Maxwell. And that's everybody says, oh, there's no mugshot. No mugshot. No mugshot. Where's the client list? No mugshot. And that's to distract you from the fact that the FBI, all right, among other agencies, have had a plethora of evidence, not only of Jeffrey Epstein, but the ring he was involved in, whether these were, let's say, sexual abuse cases or otherwise. We're talking about investment crimes, money laundering. It looks like there was some arms dealing in there. They know a lot. And it's not a client list. All right. They have hard drives and they have books this thick, and that's what we know about. Okay. Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested. Her family was at the trial. I know journalists that personally were there every day covering it. All right. We got to get those guys on. I got to get Addy Ads on the show. And then I also have got to get my man, who else is the other one? Man, it's going to kill me. Because he's a Midwesterner. He's a Wisconsinner. And he also did great work in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. The Rundown Live. Okay, we'll say that. There it is. It's Kriston Harris. Kriston T. Harris. Those guys were there. And I had to hear these things that Ghislaine Maxwell hadn't even been arrested or she was protected. No, she played ball. And now she's in a country club prison. You know, Whitney Webb briefly discussed this. And she's given every amenity. And now they're trying to rehab her image by giving her these pieces where she's denying she was a part of anything. And that, you know, basically she's the best thing since breakfast. There she is. Run, 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 run. I mean, there she is. Good old Ghislaine. Okay? So, look. She cut a deal behind the scenes. You better believe she did. You better believe it. There are sort of under the table and over the table arrangements. You get it? All right, moving on down the line here. I thought this was an interesting tweet from Eric Weinstein. And I'm not a huge fan of the dark intellectual web or Eric Weinstein in particular. Every once in a while, he seems to come to his senses and say something, in my opinion, that does have some relevance and is important, okay? So, he says, one of the questions about UFOs that needs to be asked and that I don't hear much about is, has the U.S. government built fake UFOs? UFO people are so focused on whether they're real UFOs that they don't push hard enough on this question. Allow me to share a thought or two. Now, you see this, and obviously that's not a real tank. That's an inflatable tank. And I've always made this argument, okay? Number one, the decoy potential of holographic technology via other aerial vehicles. That's a real thing. And then you have the testing of other propulsion systems. All right. And what are they pushing? Aliens, aliens, aliens. When I first realized I was totally wrong about UFOs and UAPs, I was shocked by how many folks have very similar stories about recovered crashes of very similar advanced vehicles. It was mind-blowing in two ways. We have real crashed vehicles and/or we built fake alien vehicles. They're not fake. They're different propulsion systems. And then, he shows you again the illusion of it. The illusion, in my opinion, is one where they're selling you on this idea. Again, think about all the mainstream ideas that are being sold to the public at this point. One of the biggest ones, other than the multiverse that I talk about, I do not believe in. The simulation theory that I do not believe in, okay? But this one especially is that ancient aliens, ancient astronauts, came here and seeded life on the planet. There are progenitors. There are Prometheus, right? If you haven't seen Prometheus, basically that's the idea. And I don't buy it, man. I don't buy it at all because they're pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. Does that mean I know the secrets of the universe? Nope. Does that mean I'm sure? Nope. But I do know there's a ton of misinformation and disinformation, and that you need to watch Mirage Men to understand how, when the military is testing different aerial and propulsion systems, they've often put out the disinformation of UFOs and aliens. You get it? It's a great cover. And everybody points to it, but we're at least going to talk about it, I guess. Reagan himself, when he was talking about, I often think what would happen if we could put aside all of our differences and how quickly we would do so as a world. When talking about the Cold War and Russia. If there was some kind of outside threat, an alien invasion. And I've always said this, we're also in the era where you could have very real physical beings that really believe that they're from Zeta Reticula or the Sirius star system or Mars or wherever you want to imagine it. And look freaky, man. And ride in on some kind of UAV vehicle that we've never seen. Okay? And then holograms behind it and people buy it. Okay, that could actually be orchestrated. Scary. I ain't buying any of it. I ain't buying it. Nope. Sell somebody else. Sell somebody else the Mirage. Next story. Again, these are tough stories to put out there. Britain has up to 800,000 child predators who pose a risk to children, warns top cop. Okay? It says between 500,000 and 800,000 of them. Okay? And you got to understand, Britain is not even nearly as big as the United States. That's how crazy the child predator problem really is. It's funny because I have this app and I've had it for a very long time, especially having my nieces live with me back in New York, where you want to know, who the freaks are, who the predators are, who the bad people are. And there's this app called Sex Offenders. Okay, and basically you can just search your location. I don't want to give it up too much. It doesn't look like you'll be able to see it anyway. But it just red pins everything. And there's a free version, folks. You would be shocked how many of these people exist. Shocked. And then on that one, not only do you get the red pins, but you press the red pin and you see what that person has done. And here's the wild thing. You'll see multiple on most of these people. Why? Because they don't stop. They don't stop, and the system, for some reason, doesn't keep them in jail. And then you find out that you get to hear and see about some of the cases, and the people who are really at the top, the upper echelons, when they get caught doing these things, guess what? Guess what? Either it's completely covered up. I mean, you look at the Epstein ring alone, we talked about it for a second. Or when it does come out, they still don't get convicted of it. Dennis Hassert. I can't say it enough times, especially for the new audience. The longest serving Republican Speaker of the House at the time, along the ride for a very long time, was labeled a serial child molester. Serial child molester by a judge. Did no time for that. His crimes spanned all the way back to being a gym teacher and wrestling coach. The allegations against him went as far as somebody who was a 10-year-old in 4th grade being assaulted on the school premises. Now, I want people to think about that for a second. This guy was acting that way as a teacher. And somehow he not only got into politics, but got elevated to a massive level. And when he got caught after his political career, he did no time for that whatsoever. And he's an old man in a wheelchair. I always loved that old man in a wheelchair. Harvey Weinstein tried to copy that in court. Almost 300 watching. Let's get those thumbs up over at YouTube. Let's get them up. If you're on Rumble, let's rumble it up. Let's get the rumbles going. Let's get this out there. So you got a guy like Hassert. He isn't the only one. He isn't the only one. You get a guy like Mark Foley, okay, in Florida. And Foley is on television with Chris Hansen, the Have a Seat guy. Oh, have a seat. Championing a bill against child predators and then sending texts to his pages trying to have his way with them. We'll keep it that way. He does rehab. He gets a radio show. Rehab. These people are beyond rehabilitation. And this brings you back to that Epstein network. There is no client list. There's a bunch of people that have been compromised on video and in pictures, okay, and financially in a network that the current regime, which is a predator class run global system utilizing our media, military, industrial complex and others, loves to have over their minions. They love a Dennis Hassert. They love an Anthony Weiner. They can't get enough. They can't get enough. So let's continue down the line about 15 minutes. We've got Patrick Byrne for about 30. Going to be an interesting conversation. So this will be an interesting one. We'll probably be going over it with Patrick. DHS censorship agency had strange first mission, banning speech that casts doubt on the Red Mirage and the Blue Shift election events. Now, that's stuff that we really at least in detail, can't talk about here. Can't talk about it here. But what we can talk about are the carbon markets of control that are coming via the World Economic Forum. And the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, they're mouthpieces for the real people at the top. They're these pseudo-government organizations that are promoting global governance, in which these treaties that betray our sovereignty and rights as citizens across the world further enslave us. And this carbon market is now moving quickly into a currency. All right? Again, it's part of the social credit score. It's part of the tokenized slave system. So let's play this clip right here.
So central banks are also starting to understand nature has real value. Carbon, we already figured out. And carbon is moving very quickly into a system where it's going to be very close to a currency. Basically being able to take a ton of absorbed or sequestered carbon and being able to create a forward pricing curve with financial service architecture, documentation. I just came out of a meeting this morning how we're trying to accelerate that. To be quite honest, not to get very boring, that we're on financial topics and things, but they're going to be derivatives. And you need ISDA documentation if you want to trade a derivative in the marketplace.
Derivatives on carbon. This is not only going to be the Internet of Things, guys, and a social credit score, but the under-the-skin surveillance of the Internet of Bodies. That's where it's all going.
And all of this actually matters for nature as well. I'm going to quickly hand off, but again, I want to talk about value one more time, because the southern part of the world has value far greater than large elements of the northern part. And we start thinking about and putting prices on water, on trees, on biodiversity.
On biodiversity, we're going to put a market on a word. It's not even a thing. Biodiversity. They want everything. They want it all. Look how smug these people are. And then they march out Dementia Joe next to Dictator Trudeau in like command and control Cambodian dictator wear. And Klaus is loving it. He's like, yes, I am Kissinger protege. Yes, Klaus, nut swab everywhere. Big ups. COP27. New religion. Gaia, yeah.
Find where does that sit? I'm doing a lot of work out of Asia, and I say that my next door neighbor, Indonesia, is the left lung of the world, and obviously Brazil's the right, and Africa, absolutely critical. And we need their natural capital as a system-based world more than we need that 66 billion we've got sitting in the basement of the Bank of England. So how do we, and I'm hoping this discussion today, at least from a central banker's point of view, on how do we start tokenizing, how do we start building systems that actually create not only the value, but transfer that value around the world.
Tokenize. Programmable tokens in a track, trace, database society. And that's why I've always said, look, at any moment, the crypto market could become a different thing. And this is back in the days of just, before there was really a market, it was just Bitcoin. And then Litecoin kind of came around, and you had the altcoins, but really Ethereum was the big one, and that kind of really opened up the market. And then especially with Ethereum and the tokens, right, all of a sudden the game has changed. And when we talk about central bank digital currencies, they're going to program them. Okay? It's not going to be this decentralized wonderland that has been promoted by the libertarians. And I get it. You want to get out of the central banking system. But the banksters are still up there, and they're talking about trading carbon via the token system now. And you got the World Food Program, that UN program, with 1 million Iranians in it already, and a bunch of other people. They're already talking about other war-torn areas, managing refugee camps via the blockchain. This is coming quick, folks. It's moving fast, fast. But don't worry. Elon Musk or nuts is going to save us. Elon Musk fires thousands of Twitter contractors responsible for battling misinformation on the site. A week after sacking half of the permanent staff, contractors suddenly locked out of work systems turned to Twitter for confirmation. Now, obviously, if this is real, great, wonderful, awesome. But I'm still seeing fact checks everywhere, especially when it comes to this last election. And by the way, there's still a vast amount of election results we haven't seen. And it doesn't look like the Nevada and Arizona results are going to end up on the Republican end of the spectrum. Just saying. I'm not happy or smug about being right. But at the same time, when are we going to get one person, one vote again? When are we going to get paper ballots and accountability? When are we going to get rid of mail-in ballots and stop calling them absentee ballots when absentee ballots have been around for a very long time and this is a very different thing? The next thing they're going to want to push is email and biometric data. And let's see what Musk does with Twitter, but this may be that kind of digital verification system where it's an everything app and it is directly hooked into your biometric data, not just your bank account. But when that bank account all of a sudden is moved into some kind of tokenized system of carbon trading based in a global religion, think about that. That guy's speaking at a conference where in the beginning of the show, we read you their little Gaia message at Mount Sinai, where we have to bend the knee and say sorry to the earth. Repent. Repent for being a human being. Repent for using technology. Repent from eating steak. Repent from owning things. Repent from driving your car, you heartless son of a bitch. That's what they're throwing at you. That's the mantra. So in about 8 minutes, guys, we are going all the way over to the uncensored part of the broadcast. I can't reiterate it enough. You're going to have to come over to redvoicemedia.com. That's redvoicemedia.com/Jason. That's where you can sign up for $1 for the first week, and that's $10 a month. Otherwise, it's the infowarrior.podbean.com. And also you could call in. It looks like we're only going to have Patrick Byrne on for half an hour. So if somebody does call in the second half hour, maybe we'll take that caller, but we'll definitely be playing the Biden at Copenhagen watch along. But the deal is this. I want a constitutional republic. I want a separation of powers, states' rights. Those are important things. And I think that visually they became more and more important to people over the COVID 1984 nightmare as there was a mass exodus of some of these states. Me leaving New York and many others. That's just one state, okay, getting out of that kind of authoritarianism. And that's one of the reasons that that's important. But we also have to realize that our judicial, executive, and legislative branches effectively have failed us at almost every single level in that checks and balances of the executive branch. And the executive branch has morphed into really an international cartel of criminals that have colluded into this agenda that we see before us of a command control digital carbon-based system. When I say carbon, I mean command control of all life on Earth. All right? Where you are allotted digital currencies in a total track, trace, database, Internet of Bodies, transhumanist movement. That's just reality. And the control of elections has been very important. But it's not overnight that we got these machines. All right? It's just not. And those machines have already been corrupt on massive levels. Now, there had to be more adjustments to the system in order to, in my opinion, game it. And those adjustments have obviously come in the form of ballot harvesting, okay, of not only the machines themselves, but how they're counted and how that accountability is over with, rerunning these ballots. The lack of audits has always been an issue. And we're going to get to talk to Patrick Byrne in about 5 minutes. Got him for 30. He's got another one at 9:30, but this one's going to be extremely interesting. So you're going to want to at least come over on the Podbean. But really, come on. Don't you want to support the broadcast? Don't you want to make it bigger? Come on, YouTube. Come over to Red Voice Media. And I do want to remind people, 2 weeks ago we started the broadcast. That means today they're also releasing the second hour, the premium hour of 2 weeks ago. Not sure. I don't believe that I had a guest on that program, but I do believe that we talked about fusion centers, the MIAC report, the building of the Track Trace Database Society that is now installed across the country and in most places globally. It's not just the United States. You know, you look at the UK and they led the way on CCTV cameras. You look at Australia and they led the way on disarming their public. You look at Canada and they led the way in westernized authoritarianism via the nightmare we all just lived in the last 2.5 years. So thumbs it up, subscribe, share. I think that we're going to go over about 4 minutes early. That way, I don't want to, look, I love Patrick Byrne, but I don't want to risk getting kicked off of YouTube. You know, and I'm sure that Byrne's going to be livid about the results that we got in the midterms. But I really do want to talk about solutions. I want to see if there is an actual way we can stop this. Because you see what's happening. I mean, even in New York, do you really believe Kathy Hochul, and I'm not a Lee Zeldin guy either. Lee Blackrock Zeldin, not my favorite. What did he do for the people in New York while they were locking everybody down? Was he on a gravy train with biscuit wheels? I know, and I know a lot of people love to say the word rhino. Rhino. It's way beyond that, guys. It's not about left or right. It's about right and wrong. So, with that being said, I'm going to say goodbye to each platform one at a time. I hope you come on over to the uncensored portion of the broadcast, or at least listen to the interview over on Podbean. Like I said, we are releasing that second hour from 2 weeks ago